Hello and welcome to Control Delete Tutorials. My name is Jason, and today we're going to be looking at some of Unity's UI, Unity's UI basically, and I'm kind of continuing the tank game here that I've been doing in some of my other videos. So I've created this kind of simple layout in Photoshop, and let me turn that back on. I meant to hide just one part of that. So right now what we see here in the back, which just looks like this is my main image that's going to be for my background. So what I've done is I've gone into Unity and went to the UI, and I've created a raw image because this image itself is a Targa file. So I'm using that, and you can use different file types. But depending on exactly what you're using here depends on what exactly you want the file type to be. So I've created this raw image, so you can see there it says raw image, and I've loaded in my main menu image, and that's just going to go in the background. And so the way Unity's UI works is everything is placed here in a canvas, and the objects are laid out from basically from top to bottom, with the bottom UI element being what's prevalent, what we see in the front, what is top in the layer stack basically. So it's a little bit backwards from what you might expect from something like working in Photoshop, where your layers go from bottom to top. Here they go from top to bottom. This event system will be brought in when we create any of our UI elements. And so, like I said, I have the raw image here. And then on top of that, I've placed an image. So that's a UI image. And the UI image is just this kind of black. So I'm using a background sprite, and I've just colored it black. So it's just giving me this kind of a black backdrop here over top of my image. And then I've got my buttons that are over top here. And so the buttons are set up with a script that I'm using that is part of menu controls. So I've written a script here which I'm going to cover exactly what we're doing in that script. But as far as the canvas, the way I like to have my canvas set up, typically I'm going to have my game set up to a 16:9 aspect ratio, and I'm going to use the scene's camera. So there's my camera, and you can see how the field of view that the camera has extends out here. So my camera is currently set up just in my scene as perspective, and then the canvas is set up to use my main camera. So I've brought my camera, from my hierarchy here and just dropped it in the inspector. I've changed my render mode here to screen space camera, so it's using the actual camera for that. And then plane distance just says how far away the UI is here from the camera, and it's not going to really make too much of a difference here. It's always going to look exactly the same. Down here I've set my canvas scaler to scale with the screen size. So as the screen size changes, all of my elements that are here will remain where they should be. So if we go ahead and play, we also have some music that's going to pop up here. And I'm just going to stop that for a second. Let's go ahead and turn the music off. Let's see, I probably set that up on my camera. We'll just turn that off, that way you guys can hear me. So the menu is currently set up so it has these highlight elements to them. So as I highlight over them, they will highlight, and then when I click on them, they'll take me to another menu which also has music to it. And so what I've done is I've set up the button. So I've just gone to Game Object, UI, and Button. and I've created this button. Now all buttons are going to come with a text element, so you have two separate parts here. You can see these objects have anchor points as well. These anchor points help to control how the scaling is kind of dealt with. So you can see my text element is anchored to my button, so as the button changes and scales, the text will also change with that. But each of the buttons has a sprite that it'll use. You can change the color here if you want to change the color of that sprite. But you can also handle that down here in the button script. So if the button is interactable, which means I can click on it, it will use these different settings here. So it's going to have a image that it uses for the back part here. It's going to have the normal color, so I've just used a color that was, I think, somewhere here in my image for my buttons. I have the highlight color, so what color does it turn when it highlights? And then I have a pressed color. What color does it turn when I press on it? And then disabled color. Disabled color is usually going to be darker, and it's also, you can see here, semi-transparent. So you can kind of see that over top of something else there, so you can see it's semi-transparent. So that would mean that the button wouldn't be clicked on. This would be something like if you wanted to lock a player out of, like, let's say, cheats option. Until they beat the game, cheats is locked. So I could make the cheats menu item not interactable. And so those are just some of the settings that we have there. You can also change this to swap out sprites, and you can have each of these change based off of animation. Oops. Down below, you're going to have an on-click setting, and we will leave this at runtime only. But what we can do is drag in an object, a game object here, and then we can select a script from that. So I kind of want to show what that looks like. So I've created a game object in my scene that I've just called it's an empty game object, and I've just called it menu controls. Sometime you can just put this script on the main camera and drag that in, it's fine. But I'm just putting it on here so that way I can make sure that this object's in my scenes whenever I'm going to have some sort of UI button being used. So on the main controls, we have this menu button script that I wrote. I'll just go ahead and open that up. And what you can see here is that we have a public void that I've named menu index, and we're creating an int variable that is set up to scene index. We have to make sure that we're including using Unity Editor scene management, and then when this script runs and somebody clicks on the button, it's going to send them to, it's going to tell the program basically to load the scene with whatever scene index we have here. So to make that make a little bit more sense, if I click on the button and I go to the on click, I will have to hit plus to get a click function to be in here. And I've taken this object and I drug it in here. And then when I click on this, so usually this will say no function. So what I can do is go to menu button, which is what my script is called here, menu button. So I can go to menu button, and since I've made that a public void and I've put that integer in there, I can come down and see menu index. And that allows me to put a number here. So whatever number I put here, if we go up to our build settings, so I have all of my scenes that I've created here, and I've brought them in here, and these have a number identified with them, associated with them. So my main menu would be the first thing that would load, and then these other ones are numbered accordingly. So you can see here instructions is 1. So if I go to my instructions button, I'm using exactly the same object here, using exactly the same script. The difference is I'm putting in an integer value of 1. So when I click on instructions, it will take me to whatever scene is 1. So that's kind of how buttons work. Doesn't get really any more complicated than that with the buttons. Um, like I said, I can use the same object for all of these, which is nice. Um, I'm able to change the text here under the text asset, so I can put in screen name. I can decide what font that I want to use. By default, Unity is going to use the Arial font. If you want other fonts, you'll see here that there are no other fonts in here. So in order to load up other fonts, you can just simply go to your font directory on your C drive under Windows, Fonts, and you can drag those directly in. Now normally I'll make a folder here for fonts, and I'll drag any fonts that I want to use in my game into that folder, and then they'll appear here. And I believe Unity just uses the TrueType font. So you know, try to make sure that those are the type of fonts that you're getting. And usually you can use the free websites like Free Fonts or DaFont, and most of those have usually worked for me. But that's the basics for the buttons and how they kind of take us to different directories. But as you can tell, I had music in my scene. I have this audio source, and I just downloaded a free music royalty-free music from this site, and I'm just using that for this demo because the music I originally had in here was from Doctor Who, and that would get flagged on YouTube. So I have this epic music that I just called it. So when this plays the music. When I go to the options menu, I have another UI asset here. So let's go ahead and I'm going to open up the options menu. I don't want to save that. And I'm going to go to my camera, and I'm just going to turn my audio off here for a second, which will probably make this throw an error. But basically what I've done is I've created a slider UI element, and when I drag the slider, it's going to affect the music. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the music back on and show you how that works. Let's turn that on. Okay. So you can see here, I can turn the music down, I can turn it back up. And what's nice about this is I've created a static variable or a static script that records the volume. So whenever I go to another menu, it will keep that volume. So if I turn this down, if I want my music volume to be low, I can turn that down, and now my music volume is low on this one as well. So let me show you how we set that up. It's a little bit tricky. So we end up using a UI element called slider. So if we just go to game object UI slider, it's going to create this slider object. And the slider object has a bunch of different children underneath it that you can use. So if you want to change the color or the shape of any of these, you can do that in the slider. But the main function of the slider comes down to, let's see. Here we go. So we have our value. So right now my value is set to my min and max values here. So I have my min value 0, and I have my max value 1. And you can see that even updates here, so those work together. Now, it's not going to change anything. If I set this currently to there, my volume will start out lower, or at least it should. Let's see. Yeah, so there we can see. So I can set the default there in the inspector. So what I've done is I've created a script that is going to read this value that I have here. Let's see here. So this options volume, I've created a float called game volume. I have my camera, so I'm just using my scene camera. I'm getting the audio from the scene camera. I have my camera's volume, so the volume setting on there. And then I've got this static slider, option slider that I'm using. So static just basically means that I can call this out from other scripts, and it also will remain consistent throughout the build of my game. Then I have another static float, and that's the slider value. So we start off first in our void start by basically saying that the scene camera equals the camera.main. So it gets the main camera from the scene. And then we have the cam audio, so this gets the scene cam component audio source. And then we have the option slider, which gets the component slider. So this is being applied to my slider objects. So since I have this applied to there, I can just do get component slider. And I have to make sure that I'm using unity.ui. Otherwise, none of this code is going to work. So this is applied here. Now, I could probably make these so they're not public anymore, but I'd like to leave things as public just so I can troubleshoot things and make sure everything is working. So you can see here we have the slider component. So that's what we're getting here in the script. And then what I've done is I've created a static class. So I have my public static audio, and if you look at most of the scripts that you create, it'll say like public class, and it derives from mono behavior. Well, this one's not going to do that, and this object doesn't get applied to anything in my scene. This just stays, it stays in my assets folder. So I create a variable here called public static float volume equals 1. And so I will end up using that in a later part here. So I'm going to say on update, so I'm going to do the cam audio volume equals the cam audio. So whatever that is set to. I have the cam volume set to static audio volume. So that's this script, and its volume is set to 1. So by default it starts out equal to 1. And then we say slider value equals the option slider and its value. So I'm storing the slider value here, and then I'm saying set the static audio dot volume, so set this one that can be called in any scene, set it to whatever the slider value is here in the options menu. And then there's a main volume script. Let's take a look at that. So this one is pretty similar, but this is being called from other scenes. So if I go to one of my other scenes, like the main menu, don't save, and I go to my camera, it's going to have a main volume script applied to it. And so what this does is it gets the scene camera from here, gets the cam audio, and it gets the cam volume. But the other thing that it does is it sets the camera's volume to whatever the static audio volume is set to. So whatever this is set to. So I have the volume script that's telling this script what to set this value to, which it defaults to 1. And then I have this script, which is applied to my camera in my other scenes that are don't have the slider in them. And this one is set up so that it reads whatever this volume is set at, which is really nice. And that's kind of the basics for setting up a menu for your game, and for making it so you can have a volume control setting. So if we go back through here just real quick, in order for this to work, we have to have our menu button script applied to an object in our scene. We have to go to the button, and we have to hit plus and create a setting here in our on click. We have to drag whatever has that screen applied to it into the first part here, and then we have to set the index number here for what scene we want to load up when we click on it. So that's for all of those. And then in the options menu, we have our volume control. We also have our back button, and I just have this back button set up so that takes us back to 0 when we click on it. So it takes us back to the main menu. And we have our slider, and our slider has this options volume script on it. And this is the one that takes the information from the slider and applies it to our static variable. And then we have our main volume script, which reads that static volume in all of our other scenes that don't have audio. If you have more questions about the Unity UI, I'd be happy to do a full video talking about all the different UI elements and what you can do with them. Just leave me a comment and let me know exactly what it is you'd like to see, and please subscribe so that way if I do post a new video that shows just UI elements in general for Unity, you'll be able to see that video. So thanks for watching. Hopefully you like this video.